It's business as usual at Patriots training camp, but it's Drake Maye handling both Drake Maye and Joe Milton correctly. We'll examine here on Pats Cast.
Pats Cast roars in the night. Pats Cast shining bright. Discuss the
Welcome to Pats Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Good to be with you. The Patriots wrapped up another fully padded practice at training camp on Sunday, and looks like Drake Maye is sticking to what he's been doing. Drake Maye, Jacoby Brissett, splitting most of the important reps, getting about 90% of the reps out there. Joe Milton getting scraps, same with Bailey Zappi, who is, for some reason, still in the mix. And look, I know we shouldn't do too much Monday morning quarterbacking off of a preseason game where it was rainy. Drake Maye barely played, Jacoby Brissett barely played, Bailey Zappi played almost the entire game, and Joe Milton looked very good out there. But I would like to see some changes being made based off of Thursday's game and based on what we've seen from the Patriots quarterbacks so far. But first, I want to make a correction on what I said on Thursday night's podcast, where I was a little bit excited about Joe Milton coming off of his strong performance relative to the other quarterbacks. I opened the podcast saying he was the greatest quarterback I've ever seen, and that may have been a bit hyperbolic and a bit unfair to Tom Brady, who is indeed the greatest quarterback of all time. So I will amend what I said on Thursday and say Joe Milton is the second greatest quarterback I've ever seen. So, taking it in stride here a little bit. I've gotten a little bit of criticism for that. So yeah, it goes Brady, then Milton, and then probably Mac Jones at a distant third. But in all seriousness, Joe Milton, I would like to see him get more reps. He looked incredible on Thursday, and yes, he was going against guys who are probably never going to see an NFL field during the regular season, but it was encouraging enough that you want to see a little bit more coming out of him. Now, am I saying he's a better quarterback than Drake Maye? In all seriousness, probably not, but he is more athletic. He does have a stronger arm. He does seem to have a quicker release. Both quarterbacks have accuracy issues. They have very similar raw traits, but just having Bailey Zappi back out there as of this moment in time doesn't make a lot of sense to me, unless the argument is the offensive line is in such a Swiss cheese situation that the Patriots don't trust putting any of their quarterbacks out there behind center. Jacoby Brissett, the presumed starter, you don't want to put him in harm's way. Drake Maye, he's the quarterback of the future. You don't want to put him in harm's way. And then they drafted Joe Milton as insurance in case it doesn't pan out with Drake Maye. He's a very similar quarterback in a lot of ways. And you don't want to put him in a dangerous situation behind that Patriots offensive line. So Bailey Zappi is essentially cannon fodder in the meantime. But at a certain point, like we're heading into the second of 3 preseason games on Thursday, you're going to want to get a lot more reps out of Drake Maye and see what you got there. Same with Joe Milton. And I think the Pats missed an opportunity on Thursday to really get him out there and see what you got, so then you can make a better assessment about his development and the future of the team. But this is a bit of a change in strategy from what Bill Belichick would have done. He played Mac Jones a lot throughout his first preseason games, especially the first game. I think he had about 16 or 19 reps or something like that. Certainly played more than one series, which Drake Maye played, but they're not doing that right now. They barely put Brissett out there. They barely put Maye out there. And, if you're not going to play Maye during the season unless Brissett goes down, don't you want to see a little bit more of what he can bring? And same with Joe Milton. I thought, okay, maybe they're going to play Bailey Zappi until halftime after Drake Maye left, and then you put Milton out there throughout the second half and see what you got. They didn't even do that. They basically played Bailey Zappi from midway through the first quarter to about midway through the third quarter, almost played 3 full quarters, and that was a bit discouraging to see because I don't think at this point Bailey Zappi is going to make the roster. And yeah, I talked about on Thursday, maybe they're making the case hey, he does well in the preseason, you could potentially trade him, but I think people kind of know who Bailey Zappi is at this point, so you're not going to get a lot for him, if anything, in a trade. I think he's probably going to be cut. A la Juju Smith-Schuster, who was cut just after Thursday's game. Not too much of a surprise there at the receiver position, just has lost a step or two, isn't fully healthy. You would think they would do something similar with Bailey Zappi because they're encouraged by Maye and Milton, and you still have Jacoby Brissett, the veteran, starting. I don't know why they haven't made that move for Zappi yet, but look, it's still early on, right? We still have 2 more preseason games. We still have a lot of cut downs coming, but there is a very realistic possibility the Patriots have 4 quarterbacks on the roster like they did when Tom Brady first came to the team. I'm just not sure why you would keep Bailey Zappi there unless you are so discouraged by the offensive line that you think you're going to put Drake Maye and Joe Milton's development in jeopardy by putting them out there if Jacoby Brissett goes down as the starter. So really not sure why they're doing that. And we saw in Sunday's practice, they're basically doing the same thing. The depth chart stayed the same as the first preseason game. Drake Maye continued to work with basically the second and third string offensive lines. In fact, the only time he's really taken snaps from the first string offensive line was the few snaps that he got in Thursday's preseason game. Like, that was the first time he had ever taken snaps behind David Andrews, and then they pulled the O-line and put Zappi in, so I kind of get that argument a little bit. But don't you want Maye at least getting some snaps from those guys in practice if he's going to be a serious backup? Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But Maye basically working with the second unit. The first unit, once again, consisted of Vidarian Lowe at left tackle, Sidi So, David Andrews, and Mike Owenu from left to right in the center, and then Chuks Okorafor starting at right tackle, which means Caden Wallace is once again splitting reps between right and left tackle with the second unit. You would like to see Caden Wallace out in that starting unit at some point. We're all thinking it might happen, but the truth is Vidarian Lowe has had a solid training camp. It's a very low bar from what we're expecting out of Vidarian Lowe. So maybe he's the starting left tackle, at least until they're confident in Caden Wallace, but that also factors in to the Swiss cheese situation that the offensive line is currently in, and the reason why Jerod Mayo is perhaps hesitant to put Drake Maye and Joe Milton out there in real game situations. But Pats are still out there in full pads for the 7th time and 5th practice in a row. They're preparing for a joint practice this week with the Philadelphia Eagles before their second preseason game on Thursday. Wouldn't say the practice was full speed. It focused mostly on 2-minute situations and red zone scenarios, and NFL referees were present on the field, and they were throwing flags like crazy for both the offense and the defense, and that has been an issue so far throughout camp and was an issue in Thursday's preseason game, especially for the offense in false start penalties, pre-snap miscommunication, and that's something Drake Maye has struggled with thus far. And Drake Maye kind of had a topsy-turvy practice once again, was 5 of 12 in team periods, threw an interception, should have thrown a second interception at one point, did have a touchdown, 2 drops, and there was a sack. Jacoby Brissett did have a very solid practice, though, went 10 of 12 with 2 touchdowns. But once again, Bailey Zappi and Joe Milton didn't really do anything in team periods. Bailey Zappi was 0 for 1 on his passes, and Joe Milton was 0 for 2. Like I said, don't know why Zappi's there. Would love to see Milton at least get his reps. Or you give Maye and Brissett reps with the first team. They're on the field longer, and then you have Milton out there for everything left. That's what I hope the Patriots will do. Maybe this time next week, that's what they'll be doing, but we haven't seen it so far, and Bailey Zappi is still on the team. But overall, a tough practice for Drake Maye, particularly during situational drills. He faced a lot of difficulties pre-snap with the play clock, threw an interception, had a near interception, a sack, and his interception came on a deflected pass that was ultimately caught by Dietrich Wise. So kind of another setback for Maye, although he did have some pretty good throws. Seems a little bit hesitant in terms of getting rid of the football. He's making his reads quickly, but he's not getting rid of the football quickly, despite what Alex Van Pelt recently said, saying he's very encouraged by Drake Maye's decision-making and willingness to get rid of the football quickly, but that has been something he struggled with. His mechanics are cleaned up, though. I mean, his footwork looks night and day different from early in rookie minicamp to where they're at now. His throwing motion looks a lot better. He's just kind of going through the motions a little bit slowly out there in terms of getting rid of the football. and we hope that will improve. West Coast offenses, they're all about timing and rhythm, and it seems like Drake Maye is just a tick behind where he should be, but encouraging from where he was a couple of months ago. So I'm not that worried about Drake Maye. I think it's pretty obvious Jacoby Brissett is the starter, and he's had some good practices thus far. I just want to see more out of Joe Milton, and you drafted him for a reason. I'm not saying this needs to be a competition between him and Drake Maye, but look, maybe the idea is you redshirt Drake Maye for a year and say no matter what, he's not going to see the field. And if you're going to do that, then I think Joe Milton should be a factor in there throughout training camp and the preseason and potentially the regular season. Look, Joe Milton is 3 years older than Drake Maye. He has a lot more experience. He has similar traits. And if your concern is we don't want to play Drake Maye in year one because we don't have a great offensive line and we don't want to put him in a dangerous situation, well, then maybe the argument isn't, well, let's have Bailey Zappi as the backup because he has experience. Maybe the argument is Joe Milton should be the backup because he has more speed and athleticism and escapability than Drake Maye does, and he's going to be able to deal with a bad offensive line better than Drake Maye can as a rookie because Joe Milton can extend plays better than Drake Maye can. That doesn't mean Maye's not going to be the better quarterback down the road, but I don't know what Jerod Mayo is doing when it comes to Maye, especially after what we've seen. Maybe we're overreacting from one preseason game, but seems to me, considering Milton is 3 years older than Maye, you want to have him compete for the backup role there and then just say, look, we think Maye's the guy of the future, but Milton is more prepared to deal with bad protection than Maye is, and we don't want to hurt Maye because we think his development will exceed Joe Milton's down the road. But you're not seeing that. That doesn't seem to be the strategy. And that would also put the Patriots in a bad situation optically because the national media is going to say Joe Milton has leapfrogged Drake Maye on the roster, where in reality it's like Drake Maye is the future quarterback, but Joe Milton is more prepared to take the hits and deal with the pressure than Drake Maye is at the moment just because of his raw athleticism and traits. But I think because the national media and even the Boston sports media isn't that nuanced, it's going to be a tough narrative if the Patriots do, in fact, try to leapfrog Maye on the depth chart from Milton, at least this year. It's my idea. I haven't heard a lot of people say it, but it's something I think they should consider at the very least if the approach is Drake Maye should be a redshirt rookie and then come in year 2 or year 3 and take over as the starter. Joe Milton might be better prepared to deal with that type of adversity that comes from not having a superior offensive line. But as of right now, we haven't seen anything like that. But I want to hear from you. Do you think that's a good idea? I mean, am I overreacting to Joe Milton? Look, I don't think the Patriots are going to be any good this year, right? Like, I don't think they're going to be as bad as people say. I think there's a real chance they're in the playoff race heading into December and competing for right until the last week of the season. I really think they're that good, especially because of their defense. They got good tight ends, good receivers, good running backs. It's just a matter of the quarterback situation and the offensive line situation. And if you think this season's a throwout, well, I understand sitting Drake Maye, but I don't understand sitting Joe Milton, especially if Jacoby Brissett goes down and he's more able to handle defensive pressure than Drake Maye is at this point. But we all know the optics if that were to occur, so I'm really not so sure we're going to see that. But it's just an idea. I'm curious to hear from you if you think that's a good idea. Let me know in the comments below. Some other news from practice. Very interesting competitive kicking competition between Joey Sly and Chad Ryland, who are both fighting for the Patriots' starting kicker job. Players were squirting water on them, waving hands, making a lot of noise, and trying to distract them as they did a QB competition on the field. Sly hit a 42-yard field goal against the Panthers on Thursday, and then made a 53-yarder in a situational drill today. During all those distractions, Sly went 3 for 4, while Chad Ryland went just 2 for 4. Both kickers missed from 49 yards, but Sly hit from 53, which Ryland missed. And look, we know Chad Ryland has a elite level foot. Like, he can kick 63-yard field goals, no problem. The problem is he's just not very consistent. He's not the most accurate, and that's the reason why Joey Sly, who may not have quite the leg that Chad Ryland does, is still in the competition with him, and I think this is going to come down to the wire, and I know Patriots fans were not satisfied with Chad Ryland last year. He's the reason they lost the game to the New York Giants about midway through the season, when the season started to seem like a lost cause. We should thank him. We got the 3rd overall pick because of it, but that's not the type of kicker you want moving forward. We all hope Chad Ryland will improve, but like I said, in that kicking competition with all the distractions, he went 2 for 4, while Sly went 3 for 4 and kicked the longer 53-yard field goal through the uprights. So I might give Joey Sly a leg up at this point in the kicking competition, but like I said, I think this is going to come down to the wire, and it's hard to say who's going to be the best kicker at the end of the day. Some highlights from the day: Jaquay Jackson, who had the touchdown catch from Joe Milton on Thursday, had an impressive double move to beat Mikey Vicker in one-on-ones. He's really, his stock is really moving up. Not saying he's going to make the team, but definitely in the conversation for the practice squad. Marco Wilson consistently shut down Jalen Polk in press coverage. And then both Drake Maye and Jacoby Brissett completed twisting throws off of bootlegs, and Maye's passes to Polk looked pretty good in those situations. Demario Douglas had a very good practice today, returning from his injury, caught all 5 of his targets. Jacoby Brissett looked like the best quarterback on the field once again. And Chuks Okorafor looks pretty solid at the right tackle position, went 2 for 2 in one-on-one reps, including against Matthew Judon today. People who struggled, like I said, Chad Ryland had a rough day. Jalen Polk had a rough day. Drake Maye struggled in situational drills, made multiple mistakes. And Christian Gonzalez hasn't been as consistent as we had hoped. He allowed all 3 receptions in one-on-one drills today, but I'm not that worried about Christian Gonzalez. He looks pretty good out there. I think he'll be fine. Like I said, this wasn't a full speed practice, and when it does get full speed, that is where Christian Gonzalez really tends to shine. So looking ahead, Patriots have another practice on Monday. It'll be interesting to see if they're back in prep pads again, because the important practice is on Tuesday, and that might be even more important than Thursday's game against the Eagles. Patriots have a joint practice with Philadelphia that day. That's going to be a really good test for both the offense and the defense. You would expect Jalen Hurts to be out there. We know the Eagles are in a bit of a dysfunctional situation with the relationship between their quarterback and their head coach, Nick Sirianni. Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Looks like the two weren't really talking to each other at the end of last season, and that kind of impacted the culture and the reason why the Eagles really struggled the rest of the way. So it's an interesting. We know the Eagles have the talent to be one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NFC, but there is a lot of dysfunction there. You know, Bill Belichick is kind of in the background waiting for that head coaching job. If it doesn't work out with Nick Sirianni, a lot of people expected him to be fired. So this is an interesting time to be having joint practices with the Eagles, with a much more talented roster than the Patriots have, at least at the moment. So that will be a good test in joint practices on Tuesday. I would expect Drake Maye to get a ton of reps because he won't be taking any hits in his red jersey. So he'll hopefully get some reps with the first team offensive line, more than just a series like he did on Thursday, and I would expect him to get more reps along with Jacoby Brissett on Thursday. We'll see if Bailey Zappi is still on the roster by then. Ideally, he's not, and we can go, Jacoby Brissett in the first quarter, Drake Maye in the second, and then have Joe Milton ride it out through the second half. I think that's the ideal situation. Then when you head into the final preseason game against Washington, then you just split it, Jacoby Brissett in the first half, Drake Maye in the second, and then you sit Milton unless you think he does have a shot at the backup role, like I think he should. That's basically what I would predict at this point, but Jerod Mayo being very cautious so far with the quarterbacks, but I would expect him to open it up a little bit more this week in joint practices and against the Eagles on Thursday. We'll be here at PatsCast throughout the week to cover it. If you like this video, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and we'll see you throughout the week.
Smoke comes in with fire, not a whisper of doubt. Rookie standing tall under heavy shroud. Drake's got the traits like a gale. Together they storm, no way they can fail. Pats cast roars in the night. improving his feet. Together they conquer, only Jacoby can compete. That's cash rolls in the night. That's cash shining bright. Discuss the game, feel the fight. That's cash feels so right. Long as steel, hearts of fire. Two young bucks, relentless desire. Fans in the stands, round and proud. That's cash echoes through the crowd. Coaches watching wonder, growth in every snap. Joe keeps it cool, never falls in the trap. Drake's got the vision, he flies like a hawk, breaking down barriers, nothing to block. That's cash roars in the night. That's cash shining bright. Discuss the game, feel the fight. That's cash feels so right. That's cash feels so right. Coaches watching wonder, growth in every snap. Joe keeps it cool, never falls in the trap. Drake's got the vision, he flies like a hawk, breaking down barriers, nothing to block. That's cash rolls in the night.